I'm just going to read the opening prayer for our Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
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 David,
Okay.
you're on.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. As I promised, I now have a new microphone, so I hope you can hear me. All right, today's
You
quotation.
come over loud and clear.
Thank you. This morning's quotation will be from Tennyson. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes. The slow moon climbs. The deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down, and it may be that we shall touch the happy isles and even see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Thank you very much. And back to you, Marty.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Marty, could I read something? It's very
Sure.
Okay. This is a definition of Jews, okay?
Okay.
Most Jews can be said to stand for certain ideas and attitudes, a particular concept of morality, a reverence for law founded on the idea of truth, a penchant for asking nettlesome questions, skepticism towards would-be saviors, and a liberal passion for freedom.
Very interesting. And where is that definition found?
Unfortunately, I can't find my source, but it's obviously not mine. So, no.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Very
Yes,
interesting.
Helene, I'm sorry for interrupting. Helene, is your speaker on?
Helene.
Pardon me, I'm not hearing so well.
Oh, okay. I thought that you wanted to say something.
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm
okay.
fine. Thank you.
And Rabbi Miri is finally settled in. Okay.
Maybe I am.
Okay. And Ricky is here again, and Marsha, welcome back. Any questions about what we've been going over so far? Okay, I think we left off at Exodus 23 verse 4 is where we start. Is that right?
Yes.
Very good. Well, if somebody would care to to read verses 4 and 5.
Okay, I'd be happy to begin.
Thank you.
When you encounter, oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Somebody said I think it was David. Okay.
Yes. Okay, thou shalt not rest the judgment of thy poor in his cause. Keep thee
it would be verses 4 and 5.
23,
Okay.
4.
If thou
20
meet
verse it's chapter 23
verse 4.
verse 4.
Okay, if I can see it, it's here. If
Okay.
thou meet thine enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt more surely bring it back to him again. If thou see the ass of him that hatest thee lying under its burden, thou shalt forbear to pass by him. Thou shalt surely release it with him.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. First, any comments about this? Yes, Rabbi.
So I have a question for the group, and I have to apologize. I have my typical after High Holy Day experience cold, so I'm not COVID positive, but been testing that, but just sore throat and hoarseness and whatever. Uh, um, there's two examples in both of these verses that the translation that David read emphasize the verb by adding like the surely, you must surely do this or whatever. In Hebrew, it's kind of a doubling up of the verb. The grammar changes, the vowel pattern changes a little bit. But I guess the underlying or the overriding question is why with some mitzvot, some of these commandments, it is it emphasized like with you must surely do this, whereas with others it doesn't. Okay. How do people, why would something like these two phrases, these two statements, to if you see your neighbor's animal wandering lost, not, hey, it'd be a good idea if you went and helped it back. It was, you must surely do it. You can't cop out, kind of thing. So how do we determine which of the mitzvot or which of the actions warrant the doubling and emphasis that this is something that you can't cop out from? Just a question for the group, I guess.
Go ahead, Don.
Well, I don't know, Rabbi, but I'm guessing that it has something to do as a counterbalance to the adversary in the two verses. That it's not, you said neighbor, but I don't know what the Hebrew is for the two adversaries in those two verses, enemy and the next verse. But I suspect that where there's a wandering animal and I know it's my enemy animal, that I would be reinforced to go and return that. That's my wild guess.
Yeah, I may have misspoken if I said neighbor. These verses specifically say enemy.
Enemy.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Michael.
Well, I see it as a way of making peace with your enemy by returning his property and just creating a more an environment of peace.
Okay. Very good. Yes, Gail.
I see two things going on here. First of all, you're returning property to someone. And as Michael says, that could be a peace offering. Secondly, you might, of course, I'm biased here about this subject, but you're also saving perhaps the animal's life. The animal that's overburdened or the ox that's gone astray and is probably going to get into trouble. So I think that it's a double mitzvah.
Very good. Very good. Any other interpretations or comments? Yes, Don and then Michael.
Yeah, just to tack on, I would also see it as an opportunity rather than just a random event. It's an opportunity to cross the bridge to one's enemy.
Very good. Very good. Yes, Michael.
No, I'm not going to, I'll let that go.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Helene.
Is it possible that some of them are thinking and some of them are action?
In what way? In what way, Helene?
Well, give me one. Give me.
Well, we first read, when you encounter your enemy's ox or ass.
Honey, I can't hear you. Try it again.
Oh, maybe somebody else can.
No, you're doing fine.
You can hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back to him. When you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. So what does that mean to you?
It means that what Michael said was peace, that God wants peace above all, that he wants this anywhere you go and anything you do, that is your job.
Okay, Amy had, thank you. Amy, you had your hand up before the rabbi did, so you get the next one.
Well, I see it a little differently. I see it with a reverence and an obligation to care for animals regardless of to whom they belong.
Very good.
I agree. I like that.
Yes. Very
I was
good.
basically going to say the same thing.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's good. That's what Gail was alluding to, that the animals have rights also. Yes, Rabbi Mary. Mary, your microphone is off.
Muted.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought that if I interpret you, Rabbi Norman, correctly, I'm not sure, that there are certain mitzvot that are in a certain way and other in a different way. And I think that this one is, you have mitzvot that in English, the verb is not so strong as in Hebrew, which I mentioned before, which is tzivui. It's a command, okay? Respect your parents, don't steal, don't murder, etc. Here, it's connected to time and place maybe too. And it's not when, the translation of when is not exactly, it means here, if by chance you meet this and this is what you need to be doing. Which means this is not I put a gun on your head and said, do this and that, but only in case, only in the time that that happens. I'm not going to contradict everything that you say about animals, but because it's very interesting how we talk about animals. But I think that in this case, it's not, the word mitzvah means command. And here is a command by under certain circumstances.
Okay. Now, in my reading here in Plout, he says when. So when, and then you must. So it's more than just something to think about. I think I do believe that he means that this is an obligatory statement, no questions to be asked.
Well, that's why there's the doubling of the verb.
Right. Oh, okay.
Okay, this is a statement. I call it a moral statement, if you will. This is a if from the Hebrew, Miri's right, but from the Hebrew, this is if or when such a thing should happen. Should you find yourself in this situation, this is the guideline. This is how you should. This is how you must, or how you should. God says, how I expect you to react.
Okay. This dovetails a little bit into what Michael was addressing and what Don was addressing as well. It can change the mind of your enemy about you as an individual, and with that, the extension to the rest of your people. It reminds me of a program that was on TV, and some of you may remember I have mentioned this in years past. There was a program called Night Court. And on one occasion, there are several dignitaries from different countries that were arguing amongst each other, and they got into a fight. Rather than making a decision by the court, he invites them to come into his chambers. And the first thing and they still want to proceed with fighting and arguing, but he says, now what I'd like you to do is open your wallets and take out a picture of your grandchildren and talk about your grandchildren. They all come to an agreement of friendship as a result of this. And then they're able to resume their diplomatic negotiations in a peaceful way. And I think this is what Michael and Don were getting after. I think this is a very important lesson, that there are other ways of doing things rather than fighting and arguing. Yes, Michael.
This reminds me of a present day in Israel, and I believe, I'm not sure how accurate or correct this is, but I heard that if there's a suicide bomber that actually can penetrate the borders of Israel, and he does this act, blows things up, and that suicide bomber is still alive, he is the first one into the operating room. I mean, that's what I've heard. I don't know how correct that is, but if that is correct, it demonstrates that, it would demonstrate to me that Israel would go to any length possible to make peace. See?
Very good.
So
I just don't know. I hadn't heard that part, about the if you will, suicide bomber. He didn't commit suicide, so but he would be taken care of first before anyone else. I find it very interesting. I just don't know. David had his hand up, and then Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what Michael's good point. It really struck something, because I read in a newspaper a number of years ago, there was a young woman, potential suicide bomber, and she had the little grenade that she was holding and was about to toss it when she looked at it and she decided, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. And she walked with the grenade, turned herself into the Israeli police. And that was that. She said, I'm not going to do this. And it just takes, I think, one person to say that. And the amount of influence she might have had is really quite enormous. But I just thought of this after listening to Michael's good comment.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Rabbi.
I could only add what Michael is said that he had heard. I can't contradict it, but I do know that the policy at most of the major trauma centers in Israel is that when patients are triaged, when they're brought in, they are attended to based on the severity of their injuries, not based on their nationality, or anything else.
Okay.
That's a clear policy,
Right.
but I don't know about an intentional bomber being treated first. I don't know.
I just don't know the answer. Yes, Don.
Yeah, going back to verses, there's an interesting difference between 4 and 5, because in finding the ass that's walking around the village and bringing it back, it's kind of equivalent to finding a wallet and bringing it back to the owner. But the next verse is more equivalent stopping when somebody's got a flat tire by the roadside, because now you're with that person. Now, you know, here's the person who hated thee, and you're actually getting into his personal space to give him a hand. Interesting difference between the two verses.
When you're giving someone a hand, what are you actually doing at that time? In my mind, you're creating a bond.
I was just gonna, and you're avoiding some calamity if you're giving them a hand. What was the calamity that would have happened?
A friendship.
Yeah. And, you know, and so as Michael and Don said before, it may change. It doesn't always, but it may change the mind of your enemy. So I think that this is a very interesting way of looking at things at that point in time, at that point in time itself, in ancient times. Yes, Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, there's a very specific comment about this in the eighth Chaim that
Mhm.
quotes the Talmud, noting that and this is where I made my goof earlier on. In Deuteronomy, it says if you see a wandering animal, your friend or your neighbors.
Mhm.
This one was the enemy, so that's where I got mixed up. But it says the sages required in the Talmud that one tend first to the animal of one's enemy so as to subdue one's evil inclination. That's like what Michael was saying, to help make peace.
Right.
Right.
So I think it's a very important way of looking at events. I have to ask the question. Well, no, I won't. For another time. I'll bring that up later on. It'll be several years from now. Okay. Any other?
We'll remember.
Okay.
We'll put a little string around our fingers and we'll remember.
Anyway, any other comments about this? Why? Wait a minute. Grace mentioned something here. Let me double. Oh, we are in Exodus 23, verses 4 and 5.
Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome. Does this also imply that the role of a mediator is very important?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
But what is it?
I don't understand your question, Martin.
Is the role of a mediator in a dispute?
What mediator?
Any mediator.
Are you talking in general?
Is the role of a mediator very important, and why? Yes, please, Rabbi Mary.
There is a midrash in which Aaron, the brother of Moshe, is called Rodef Shalom. He is someone that looks for shalom, for not fighting. And the story goes that Marty and Michael are not in good relationship. So Aaron is going to go to Marty and said, you know, Marty, Michael really is very sorry for what happened, and he asks you to forgive him. And then he goes to Michael and he said, you know, Michael, Marty really, really doesn't mean, and he didn't mean so forth. So they both come together. So in this case, the mediator has a very important role when so people don't hold grudge forever and ever, and we are after Yom Kippur, so
good.
Yeah,
Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, the mediator, there's two important points with the mediator. First, the mediator has to be neutral, and you have to
Okay.
know that. It's very important that the mediator is absolutely neutral and that the right mediator is chosen for whatever needs to be mediated.
Oh, of course.
You know, yeah.
By whom? By whom is chosen, Michael? Who
The,
chooses him?
I'll tell you this. The mediator should be chosen between the two people, or how many people are having the issue, if that's possible. It's like in a court. You know, they both sides, they have to agree with who's going to be on the jury. It's along those lines.
Legally, the mediator should not know either
Right.
of the people in the dispute, but at the same time, both people entering into mediation, or even a corporation or whatever, they have to feel that they are not going to get everything they want, that it's going to be somewhere in between. Also, the lawyers involved are not in the room. It is the mediator's job, not the lawyers. And friends or family are not allowed in the room.
Now, what you're talking
I know this because Sue is a legal mediator, and there are different types of mediators.
Right.
There are business mediators, there's civil mediators, there are divorce mediators, it goes on, custody mediators.
Right.
And they all have to pass an examination in that specific area. So it's very regimented.
Yeah, so it also, what you just said is quite important, because of the fact I recently wanted to have something mediated, which was not that difficult. You know, just a simple mediation between two people who are having an issue, not a big criminal type of or corporation type of situation, but something rather simple. And so, like you said, it depends what needs to be mediated.
Mm-hmm.
The subject, you know. So
Sure.
Right, but Michael, think about an instance in which a mediator. There is a movie about it. You have, you have the bad guys in a bank holding hostages, and they won't let them go unless they bring a helicopter, whatever. And then you have the police that wants to break in. A mediator is going to come and not say, because he doesn't know, he can convince each side to get less. But it's not the sides that are willing to do. I had a mediator when I got divorced, as Marty said, and what we had was, the suggesting, why don't you do this and why don't you do that? Or if you do this, then this is going to do, I'll convince this to do that. So the mediator has an important role into creating a situation in which the two people can talk to each other.
I was a situation. I have to tell you something. I was in a bank many years ago, and the bank was held up while I was there, and it was a very scary situation for me. And there was no mediator needed because they just left. They robbed the bank, took about 5 to 10 minutes, and they left. And the police department caught the two individuals outside of the bank, which was very lucky for everybody inside the bank. And as I understand it, it was a simple situation where there was no shooting or anything like that. So they were grabbed, but it happened outside. So if to avoid mediation, make sure that they leave the bank.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments on this? I'm sure we can think of other situations where lending a helping hand can go a lot further. I'm going to let the rabbis address this. What about Israel's response to earthquakes, massive fires, floods, tsunamis, things like that? They go to many countries, it seems, that where they need help, and they put aside any disputes that dealing with religion, territory, things like that. Does that action, do those actions dovetail into this admonition? Yes, Helene.
I'm listening carefully because my son is a mediator.
Oh.
And he has helped me in some very, very difficult situations where I had to actually fire someone from a job. And that's a very hard thing to do. And what I learned from him was to see if there's something in that person that is suffering. Mm-hmm. That there's something in that person that's hurting and saying in some way, this must be I guess the word is empathy. This has to be difficult for you too, because, and once the empathy comes out, the mediation goes much better.
Yes, definitely. So is this one of the reasons why Israel is one of the first responders to tragedies in the world? I'm going to ask that questions of the rabbis because I don't know, because I know that they're usually right up front. Yes, Rabbi.
Well, I'll jump in. They're right up front for I guess a number of reasons, and certainly not to deny the inference that you're getting at. Like I said, call it a moral statement.
Yeah.
That you still haven't, even though the quote unquote the victim may still be your enemy, you still have an obligation to step in and help whenever you can. And it's the whenever you can, because sadly, Israel has so much experience in dealing with not only the natural disasters, but dealing with the violent attacks. And so their ability to respond quickly and completely is world renowned. The other thing is, and I say this smilingly, but also I say it proudly, is that the Israelis have a certain sense of chutzpah. Okay, and they're not going to wait for someone to ask them,
right,
will you come and help? They're just going to stand up and say, well, can I say hineni? Okay,
right.
We're here. We've got this expertise. We've got the equipment. We're on our way. Boom, boom, boom.
Okay.
Call it a little bit of chutzpah, but I think it's righteous chutzpah.
Got it. Thank you. Yes, Michael.
The United States is right up there with Israel, or Israel is right up there with the United States. In the early 1970s, I can't remember the exact time frame, but it was around the early 1970s. There was a horrific disaster with one of the nuclear reactors in the Soviet Union called Chernobyl. The United States sent teams of nuclear scientists to help with that. And what's interesting about that, we were bitter enemies at that time with the Soviet Union. They were not our friends. Not that they're friends today, but it's kind of calmed down a little bit, you know? So, and then we have the ship of mercy, where we deliver tons of food, medical supplies, and this is not to take away from what Israel does, because Israel has to be noticed in a big way because they're so small. Israel is so tiny, and they go beyond, above and beyond of any other country.
So this moral obligation is, I think, there's a teaching there. It's a teaching moment for us. I'm going, Rabbi Mary, before I and Gail also had her hand up around the same time. So let me let Gail go, and then Rabbi Mary.
I was just going to say, I've always thought of disaster relief is a particularly international kind of, you're going to a foreign country. You're dealing with people one-on-one. You're not necessarily dealing with governments. You're dealing with the victims of the earthquake or the flood, but it's a one-on-one. And I'm sure that must make an impression. If your house has just gone down the river and you have somebody who, an Israeli, for instance, come in, or American, whatever, who you've always kind of considered an enemy or not friendly, and suddenly they're helping you one-on-one. I think it's an opportunity to change minds in a lot of ways.
Agree.
So it's a win-win.
Very good. Rabbi Mary, you first, and Don.
Well, I have several thoughts that come to my mind as you guys are talking. First of all, I don't know, when you say Israel, if you're talking to the people of Israel or the country of Israel. So there is a difference there. And, when it's Medinat Israel, what Rabbi Norman said, okay, that's what's happening. Now, the governments make decisions very many times based on the individuals, Gail, what the individuals make decisions. If you watch USA and the Holocaust, you'll see that, and it's extremely, extremely painful to see the Americans behaving in that place. Now, in the Torah, we have behaviors of, and this is by God, behaviors of Israel, of the nation of Israel, behaving towards enemies and towards tribes enemies. And it's really, really, I know that Don is going to react to that really very strongly, because it's awful. So I don't know, what are we talking about? We're talking about rules that made us run and help. I do know, and this is 100%, when a keilah, when a congregation in another country is mistreating Jews, all the congregations in the world are going to come to assist, and then includes Medinat Israel, to take people out and to help them with whatever is happening. But I don't know if we can make a blanket statement about this, Gail, not about dealing with individuals, because we are attached to codes of laws and treaties and separation. So this kind of thing, it's really, really very difficult. So, if you ask as a moral code of behavior by Jews, I don't know. I really don't know if it's in each one of us to do that. If the refugees on the West Bank, the suffering there, and Israel has been setting and not helping there. It's dealing with enemies. So I think that this is a very philosophical question and moral question, ethical question for Israel behavior.
Thank you. Very good. Yes, Don, and then Michael.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rabbi Mary, and here's why. Because I think we've generalized a lot here, but there are many dimensions to helping one's neighbor. We're talking about the triads kind, where there's some disaster, emergency, and Israel jumps in. It's highly visible. Everybody can see that. But then there's a lower key, kind of philanthropic type of support. For example, world hunger, where the activities go on under the radar. You know, we don't notice it. But, so there's so many different ways to help one's neighbor that I think it's difficult to generalize here. I know, and to me, it comes down to the individual as well, because it's what's in your heart in the end. And whether you're shamed into giving or whether you give because you honestly have a moral need to. So I just think I agree with you, Rabbi Mary. It's complicated. I don't think we can jump on it.
It's none of these so far in reading all of the mitzvot, none of these are easy discussions. Okay, you can always think of exceptions to the rule and the what if situations, but it's good that we do, because I think that's why we're asked to think about these, not just do them, but there's a deeper understanding here and all the different ramifications of it. Yes, Michael.
This subject allows me to continue to ask the question that I ask from time to time. Israel is one of the first people, the Israelis are some of the first people on the scene of a natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it, it's remarkable because of the size of the country. They don't even call it a country, they call it a state. That's how small it is. Like the state of Rhode Island and New Jersey. So, and the Jews are known for doing very, very good things. And so then, including here in the United States and elsewhere. So this allows me to ask the question again, why is there anti-Semitism at all? I used to say, well, how come there's so much? But I'm going to change that and say, why is there at all? With Jews doing the good that they do. And so I don't expect that anybody to answer that at this time. Or I don't know if anybody will try to answer it at any time, because I don't get it.
Okay. That can probably be a good discussion.
Yeah,
on an opening statement for some discussion on anti-Semitism, a whole hour or two.
I don't think it. Yeah, I really don't think it needs an hour or two. Personally, I think it could be answered pretty quick. But that's my own opinion.
Okay. I see two hands up. Amy and Helene. Amy, would you mind if Helene goes before you, because she usually has to leave earlier?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Helene. Yes, Helene.
I'm trying to say this in a way that can make sense to people who don't think the way I think. But you see, I believe God, and only God, is the one who can bring this beautiful, beautiful country, this tiny drop of a country, to reality to influence the entire world is influenced by Israel and its goodness. And where does the goodness come from? Where does it come from? It comes from God. And God has children. We are all his children. We come up to be with him, to pray to him in different ways, different roads, different religions. But he's up there, he's God. And we are his children. And therefore, he wants us to love one another. A father wants his children to love one another. So who am I to say that is my decision or my mediation or anybody? I turn back to God and say, what is it the right thing to do, the kind, what would you want me to do? And that's where I come from.
Thank you. You answered my next question. So thank you in advance. I won't ask the question then, but please, Amy, if you would.
I just wanted to say that I have long wondered about the question that Michael Gervan asked. Where does this hatred of Jews come from? And I would really love for there to be a time set aside, whether it's Torah study or at a different time, that this could be explored.
Okay, I think it would be helpful because a number of people over time have asked this similar question, and I think that it would be interesting to see how it plays and the different aspects of that question. Yes. Okay, thank you. The question I was going to ask, and it's sort of baiting some people. Okay, so heads up. Why would you link this in the middle, right after a discussion about false rumors, a discussion about the mighty, and a discussion about perverse testimony, a discussion about a poor man, and then it jumps into animals. Helene gave us a clue. She spoke about man's humanity, that we're all children of God. My question was, yes, Amy. I'm sorry. Yes, Amy. Yes. You're muted.
I see it as a respect for all living things.
Yeah.
For
That's
people,
right.
for animals, that we hold them all in high regard, and that we have a responsibility to care for them, for one another as well as for the animals.
Yes, I think this is, and we have to recognize that there's food and tasks that need to be done, but can it be done to an excess where you're hurting the animals? When you do too much construction, you're hurting trees because you need the wood. How much is enough? And I think that's what this is about also. How much is enough? And in some ways, enough means restoring balance. And in some ways, it means caring. And it was alluded to. Some people will donate money. Some people will actually work on a food line or or give of themselves. I'm reminded of the brother of the publisher of our local newspaper, the Green Valley News, who's went to Ukraine. He was moved by what was happening there, and he went to Ukraine to help. Okay, so this is a lot. So I think this subject is more than just people, more than just animals. It's the entire world. I think that's what I think this is why it's all tied together in one series of thoughts. I'm going to turn it over to everyone else. I'll get off my soapbox. Any
Hi,
other
everyone.
ideas? Yes, Rabbi.
Well, I think Grace had something she wanted to say.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Grace. You're not in my good line of sight. Thank you.
No,
Okay.
no worries. Thank you, Rabbi. I'm just sort of thinking that it's about being content with what you have and looking at the world. If there is some need somewhere, if we are able, then we should pass that content well-being on. As human, as Jews, as Israel, as any country to another country, and it helps promote the idea of, can we live in peace and harmony? Can we, if we are an example of that, right? Anybody is an example of that, then I think we should share it. So I've had to be willing to help the neighbor's dog, and I'm now caring for 2 large breed dog, and I apologize for my tardiness. I tried to get on too early, and that didn't happen. When we were talking about the animals, God created them before we showed up, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of my gist on most of what I've heard today. So thank you for letting me talk and share.
Thank you. That was very good. Very well stated. Any other comments? Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, I just want to put what people are saying, to which everything obviously is correct, that put it into the context of the traditional rabbi's way of going from this particular example, let's say, into a larger generalized moral position that we're talking about. And the phrase that Hillel, amongst others, has a list of, these are the ways that you approach understanding a text or a law or an example or whatever, or a midrash even. And so the one that pops out with me is that what the rabbis call is alachat kama v'chama, that if this is so, and we all agree, we understand what the principle is for helping the animals, how much the more so would be our moral obligation to other human beings.
Thank you. That's very, very good. So I think that should we move on? Oh, yes, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, please, just for a moment. I would like to go back for a little bit, if I may, Marty, please.
Sure.
And thinking about the sending of Israelis or Americans to a natural disaster area. And this, I think, may be the most critical point I could make, is that being so small, they have a very small population. And the first responders of Israel are not a lot. They're needed desperately all the time in Israel, but they're willing to go and to leave Israel, leaving how many left? It's not like the United States. No country can afford to lose one soul, the way I see it. Cannot lose one soul. And however, the United States has a lot of responders. And I say that because no country could lose not one person. So that's why I say Israel goes above and beyond, because they're sending people that Israel needs, because there's always disasters, whether they're caused by humans, mostly by humans, than anything else. So I think that point is important. That's why I wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Yes, Gail.
I'd just like to mention one of my favorite charities, and that's Doctors Without Borders.
Yes.
Now there's a there's a fabulous organization that is neutral, will go any place. So
Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah, I
point.
support it. Yeah.
Yes. Any other comments about this? I know we've tried to look at things from different perspectives. Any other comments before we move on? Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I'm not sure if this is Pirkei Avot or Midrash. I'm not sure. But the discussion is the person born good, or let me say it in Hebrew. Adam tov mineuраv or Adam ra mineuраv. Is the person good from the beginning, or is the person bad from the beginning? So it's about the nature of human beings, how they are and how they develop. So in this case, it's our Torah that tells us what to do, how to do, and so forth. So those are the moral and ethical thoughts. But it's not sure how that goes. So many times I feel that all the fights are not going to stop because people need to hate someone, to fight with someone. I don't know. It's something that bothers me tremendously.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Rabbi Norman. And then
This is
Gail.
not the midrash that Mary was thinking of, but there is a midrash that the angels are having a debate about should human beings be created, should they not be created?
Okay.
All right. And da 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 da. And then, talk about a mediator. Then, the lead angel comes in and says, great discussion, folks, but human beings have been created. All that we can do is keep our fingers crossed and hope that more of them will be good than bad.
They'll behave.
It's my belief that there are more good than bad.
I don't know if crossing the
Wait a minute,
fingers-
Michael. Gail has had her hand up. She's been waiting for a long time.
The problem with our species is that we're very egocentric. Okay. And that's why we really have a responsibility to other sentient beings, because they are not egocentric. And we're supposed to be. But, they're calling this age that we're in now the Anthropocene, which means man-centric.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we're creating our own doom day by day because we are so egocentric. If it's not good for us, then, it must not be good. Or if it's good for us, then let's use it and consume it and overdo it. And that's why we are where we are.
Okay, good point. Michael, did you have something you wanted to say before I recognize Ricky?
Well, I just wanted to just mention that I don't think for this group that crossing your fingers would work. Not for us.
Okay. No luck involved. Okay. Yes, Ricky.
All right. My feeling, and I'm the perpetual optimist, which drives some of my pessimistic friends crazy. But us as an animal, wherever, however you believe we got here, I think we survived when other of the Homo sapien, of Homo, the Neanderthals and the thises and the that's didn't, is we cooperated with each other. That was how we, in our small number, I mean, we're basically weak. You know, animals have better claws, they got better teeth, they got better, strength, they're bigger. But somehow us humans developed many more times than the other creatures. And I believe it was because of the inherent goodness, if you want to use the, good versus bad, but I don't even want to go there. But just the fact that very early we cooperated with each other. We were small bands, and alone, any one of us, wouldn't have made it. Our species would not have made it. We only made it by sticking together, helping each other. So that's, to me, I think, is the basic core of humanity. So,
We did breed with Neanderthals, though.
what?
We did breed. Yeah.
We did interbreed. We did interbreed with the Neanderthals.
I have enough Neanderthal genes that I can take up an argument with you. Okay. Hands have suddenly gone up. Okay. Don and then Amy. Okay.
Yeah, as for cooperation, bees and ants cooperate. They do pretty well. It's not just us. But the point I would,
Yeah. They're still too. Yes.
point I was going to make is that there was a study done many years ago now at the University of Toronto, and the best way to cooperate to get results and good vibes. And the method that succeeded best was what they called tit for tat, basically eye for an eye. But they used the model they used is called the prisoner's dilemma, where they set up a scene where there's two prisoners who could rat on each other or cooperate
Right.
each other. And really interesting study. But in the end, the thing that worked best was, I'll scratch your back if you'll scratch mine. So
Yeah.
Cooperation does seem to pay off.
Usually does. Amy.
I want to go back to something that Rabbi Mary said. I don't consider myself a Pollyanna. There are people that I like and people I don't care for. I can't really say there's anyone I hate. But Rabbi Mary said something that I'd like to explore a little further. She mentioned that she feels that some people have a need to hate. Do you believe, any of you, do you believe that's true? That built into our core, we have a need to hate a group or a person?
This discussion goes into a discussion of is it nature or nurture that some people have said human children are all born bad, and there are some people who have said that human children are all born good. I'm in the group that says they're born good. We do know that there are certain exceptions to the rule. We know that some people are known to have an extra chromosome that will allow them to have the potential to do bad things, serial killers. Does that mean that all of them become serial killers? Absolutely not. And so there has to be something in what they're exposed to that will allow that gene to become expressed. And I think that's the fairest way to put it. We're all a combination of those two things. Some things we cannot control, like the genes we've inherited, but sometimes we go through very rough times in growing up, and that may shape us for good or bad, taking advantage of the genes we already have on board. But we can, with love and kindness. I know Helene has her hand up, and in her book, I think that I'm going to take a stab at it and say that good predominates, and we have a chance to encourage that goodness throughout anyone's life. Yes, Helene.
Would you believe that I have been trying to go because my physical, I can't sit so long. I can't get off. I don't, my TV isn't working. I don't know what to do. Anybody want to help me? Should
Okay.
I'm
going to turn that over to Ruth Ann.
Who can help me turn
Ruth
that?
Ann will
Okay,
be
wait.
able to.
Helene, you need to be off of Zoom.
What, dear?
Do you need to get off of Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take you off.
I need to stop, but it won't
Okay.
stop.
Okay.
She's going to do it. Helene,
You're
be
off.
safe and well.
Take care.
only want to say, God bless all of you. Have a beautiful new year. And I'm saying there is no group of people that I admire more than the people in this Torah group. Thank you.
Thank you, Helene.
Thank
Be
you.
Bye,
well.
Helene.
Be well. Thank you, Ruth Ann.
You're welcome.
Yes, Marcia, you had your hand up.
Well, there's an old song from a big show. You've got to be taught before you're too late to who to love and who to hate. Now, this is a thought that why we have to be taught to read and write, but how we act, yes, that you don't cross the street if the bus is coming, but these things in us are there, and I think they have to be cultivated by seeing goodness and cultivated by our parents. Maybe they've had a hard time in life, but where is the thought that they should read something and say, it's not your job to teach your emotions. It's your job to open up the world so they can find their own.
Well
I'm
stated.
not writing the book. I'm not.
Okay. Yes, Gail.
I just want to say, going through your normal day and whatever, you can be aware of your emotions and whatever, but sometimes there are circumstances that come up, and I was in that situation years ago. And I'm not going to go into details, but let's say it was a matter of betrayal. And I literally saw red. I didn't realize that was possible. And if there had been a gun in the room, I would have used it. And it was the most frightening experience I've ever had after, I calmed down. But sometimes circumstances arise and it's just an instinct. And it's very frightening. But it can happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You say, well, just stop and think. Sometimes that isn't the way it works. So, and it's very, very frightening. And again, that's why I will never have a gun in my house, ever, 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 because I know from that experience that I'm actually capable of using it, given the right circumstances. So,
okay.
Amy, I did not talk about hate. I was talking about bad behaviors that stem, I don't know where from, because I don't know how much we can control hate. I just can tell you Now, I travel a lot, and I refuse to go to Germany and Austria. You know, and I don't have any family that were survivors. But that's my way of behaving. And it comes from a place that it's not a positive attitude toward someone, but it's the behaviors that people, because
Right.
if you are hating someone, are you going to shoot him or are you going to get away from them? You know, it's your choice of behavior towards someone that misbehave, big or small.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, some people have said that these verses that we're currently reading are for the judiciary. My question would be, then why give it to the everyday man? Yes, Don.
Well, Marty, I'm not sure it's being given to the everyday man, because the everyday man at that time probably couldn't read.
Well, they were told, Don, all of these are together with everything we've been reading from the very first commandment. This is an ongoing process, but some people have said that it is not for the people, it was for the judiciary.
I thought it was for the priests and the judiciary together, and not for the masses. That's always been my view. I could be wrong about that. But
Then why tell it to everyone?
is it being told to everyone?
It is.
How do you know that?
It just follows in the whole sequence of everything. It doesn't, there's no clause that says this is just for the judiciary.
Yes, but I mean, there's a group at the time who are being exposed to these commandments.
Okay.
And we don't know who composes that group. We don't know whether it's the million crossing the desert or the handful that are leading them and governing. We just don't know that, in my opinion.
Okay.
But the point I was trying to make earlier was that in terms of our ability to hate or to love or to do good or bad, you know, we have the agency to judge others, and to hate or love them, but we're, I don't think we're capable of knowing them well enough to do that. We don't even know ourselves. You know, I think we finally get old enough, you realize, I don't know anything about myself hardly. How,
Okay.
you know, so in terms of hating anybody else or judging somebody else or causing harm or good to somebody else, it almost seems accidental, because we don't have enough knowledge, I don't think, to make a reasoned decision about whether to do that. It's as Gail
Okay.
knee jerk, and we all have a dark side, which can be pretty scary.
Okay. Thank you. Amy.
Before you can judge me, I need to have guidelines of what expectations you have toward me. And this is, I mean, you can't judge someone if they had no idea what laws govern a society. So I think that these are designed for both the judges and the people, so that they know what societal expectations are. And then you make an individual decision whether to obey or disobey. And then you know what the punishment is if you disobey. And you just can't function without these guidelines as a society.
Okay, good point. Well, let's read verse 6, 7, and 8.
You want me to?
Go ahead, Ricky.
You shall not subvert the rights of your needy in their disputes. Keep far from a false charge. Do not bring death on those who are innocent and in the right, for I will not acquit the wrongdoer. Do not take bribes, for bribes blind the nearsighted and upset the pleas of those who are in the right.
Okay. It's interesting, but in the essence is similar to what I have in mind. Any comments about these verses? Is Amy correct that well, let's put it this way. Is Amy correct? It's for everyone, not as well as the judges? Is it just for judges, as some people have said? What are your opinions about this series of statements? A whole compilation of mitzvot. It's not just one idea. They're all related.
I agree with the concept that it's for everybody, because like, keep far from a false charge. That would be, if I wanted to falsely charge my neighbor, that's not necessarily judicial. Some of this is sort of both ways, but I think do not take bribes could be judicial, but I would think that would be for everybody also. So, I think that this paragraph goes into the direction of this was all for everybody, rather than this was all for the judges.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what do you think about you shall not subvert the rights of your needy in their disputes? Oh, I'm sorry, Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I think I would kind of modify what Amy was saying before. I can see where there are those who say that these verses in this particular chapter, whatever, were addressed for the most part to the judges. But I think that the people have a right to know what the expectations and the criteria are by which the judges are doing their job, and that those obligations or those guidelines, whatever you want to call them, should extend beyond. So, in other words, the judges are not only adjudicating. Sorry for the repetition. I'm slow on vocabulary today. They're not only adjudicating, but they're also serving as role models for the kinds of discussions, debates, arguments that the people might have. That's the way that I would see it.
I think, and there's some justification of that. How many times in Torah are these restated? All these mitzvot, they're restated several times.
And they're lumped together under different
ways,
under different categories.
That's right.
Right.
And so and the book, the Torah, is not meant for just the judges. It's meant for every person, Jewish person. But it's something that if something is repeated multiple times, and even in different ways, it means that it's very important to know them. Here's a thought. Can you name another document that is very much like this?
As in the U.S. Constitution?
I was
Yes.
the Bill
Yes.
of Rights, the Bill of Rights, definitely.
Well, they were added. It's no, it's the Constitution in its entirety, including all of its amendments.
Right.
And the amendments were there because we required different reinterpretations of things. The initial Bill of Rights was added because somebody says, "Hey, wait a minute, what about the people?" Okay.
Exactly.
So they added that. That's an afterthought, but they were designed. So here's a document that was based on this. Indeed, there was some Jewish thought in history after reading the Declaration of Independence and also the copy that was distributed everywhere for the Constitution. It just wasn't in the hands of the people in government. It was for all citizens, but in other parts of the world. And they came to, there was some Jewish thought that, oh my goodness, this is a rebirth of the promised land, because it was shadowing what was said in Torah. Our documents were shadowing what was said in Torah. Someone sent me an email this morning about Thomas Jefferson, and I mentioned to him, the fellow is a previous librarian, and I mentioned to him about walking through the libraries of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They were neighbors. Their properties abutted. One lived very regally, the other lived very humbly. And at the library in Monticello, on a shelf with all kinds of books and everything, Thomas Jefferson had several books that I found interesting. One was a copy of Torah, one was a copy of the Talmud, and the other the Zohar. I mean, he was an avid reader, but he read an awful lot. That's all I can say. And I wonder how much influence. There were Jewish supporters of the American Revolution. I found that out when we visited the island of Curacao and visited the very first temple in the New World. I've mentioned this before, and in their museum are documents from Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, James Madison, thanking these people for their donations to the American Revolution. Now, granted, some of these people their families had survived in previous generations the Inquisition, and maybe that this had something to do with it too. But I just find it very interesting as you start looking at things historically, what influence that this has had, this document that we're in the midst of reading has had on a lot of important people around the world from at one point or another. So enough said about that. But what about why is it important not to subvert the rights of the needy in their disputes? What does that reflect if you do it?
We had earlier that, I don't know, weeks ago, or maybe it was just last week, that you don't favor the poor, you treat everybody equally. So that's what this is saying. Don't subvert the rights of the needy in their disputes. So that, the needy or the not needy should be treated the same.
Okay. So verse 7, keep far from a false charge. Do not bring death on the innocent and the righteous, for I will not acquit the wrongdoer. What is your take on that?
I don't understand that.
Well, I was reading in, if you believe in an afterlife, just in case, the wrongdoer will eventually get caught, so or I will not acquit the wrongdoer. But, maybe the worst that could happen is the wrongdoer will have a guilty conscience. But what is it that
Well, what does it mean by
law will eventually catch up with the wrongdoer?
okay?
or that justice will eventually be served
Yeah.
against a corrupt judge.
That's right. Because this is dealing specifically with a behavior, whether you're a mediator, a judge, a lawyer, but what about if you're in business? What about if somebody comes knocking at your door?
Well, actually, there is writings about business, plenty of it. A little in the Torah and then in the Talmud. And it's very, very interesting what you should not do in business. But this verse I don't understand. So,
In
Rabbi,
what
if you
way,
can
Mary?
explain that, it will help me.
Okay. What do you not understand in here?
I don't understand. It says, you shall not, you shall not kill a tzaddik, a righteous, because I'm not going to, what's the word that in English? Because I'm not going to exonerate the bad guy, the Rasha.
The guilty.
The guilty, no, it says the wicked, yeah, the one that commits bad actions. I don't understand.
Well, it might help if instead of translating tzaddik in this sentence, if you translate it as innocent rather than righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the translation I have, please, those who are in the right. So that's the innocent. Well, let me see what Stone says. Oh.
While you're looking that up, Amy, Amy wanted to say something or ask something.
I'm just curious to know if this is suggesting that we not impose a death penalty because it's very difficult to judge the innocence or guilt of an individual in many cases.
I can say in U.S. law, we always say, well, why don't they carry out the justice earlier and get rid of that person? Why does it take 20 years?
To make sure that they got the right person. They get, time is given.
Yeah, to give ample time.
A lot of time is given because to take someone's life and find out that later on that person was actually innocent is very devastating. It is extremely devastating on society. Not only the blood relatives, but societies as a whole. And it demonstrates, well, that's not the death penalty is no good. So you have to give a lot of time to make sure, an ample amount of time, and there's no there is no I forget the word, but it always stays open. There's no the books never close on a murder case until they have the proof of that murder.
Hard proof.
To give an example, the Jose or the OJ murder case is closed. Even though he was found not guilty, the Los Angeles Police Department have the proof. They have the proof that he did it. That's why he was found guilty in a civil court, in a civil proceedings. So
Okay.
there they have that, but that's the thing. They need an ample time to make sure.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Turkey.
All right, the stone, the translation is very different.
Yes, it is.
It is. Do not pervert the judgment of your destitute person in his grievance. Distance yourself from a false word. Do not execute the innocent or the righteous, for I shall not exonerate the wicked. Do not accept a bribe, for the bribe will bind.
No. Stop it. Stop there.
We'll discuss the bribe.
Translation in stone.
Right.
I know I have the two, but you're going one verse forward. That translation.
I thought we were doing 6, 7, and 8. That's what I
Yes,
meant.
but okay, yes. Don't worry about it. It's a moot point. It doesn't solve anything. What Ricky is just trying to say is that it has a different way of looking at it.
Do not accept a bribe, for the bribe will blind those who see and corrupt words that are just.
Right.
So, I mean, I just wanted to read that this is a very different translation. And
Exactly.
that's exactly why I brought it up.
And by the way, we are doing justice to Franz Rosenzweig and some of his letters. Thank you, Rabbi, for letting us know about that. Anyway,
can I make a
sure
a biased statement?
Sure.
And I admit that it's biased. Okay. The Stone translation is primarily based on the interpretation of later rabbis rather than biblical scholars.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the influence is much more on the way that Jewish literature, rabbinic literature, understood the words throughout the centuries, rather than what the scholars in biblical scholarship and grammar, what they think the intention of the author was. Okay, so
that's right.
It doesn't mean that one's better than the other, but that's what accounts for the difference.
Yeah, I just wanted to show that there was another interpretation.
Right.
By reading a different translation.
By the way, this is addressed in one of his of Franz Rosenzweig's letters. As I was mentioning, you had a sneeze in there, and that's so I understand. But he was addressing this that that different schools of thought can cause different interpretations of a word, and because he was arguing that if we stay with the Hebrew itself, we have a better understanding than relying on its translation into different languages and then other translations based on those interpretations, etc. And those are also influenced by the time within which those different translations occur, because of the changes that occur in language in general, how we use language and vocabulary. It's a remarkable series of letters that he wrote. Anyway, please, Rabbi Mary.
Well, and regarding that, I would have, this is my bias, that stone is an orthodox way of seeing things. So you'll see translations that go with a philosophy of what they want. Like every translation is an interpretation. I have here Friedman, who knows Hebrew, who's a scholar, a modern one, And he says the translation that he put is, do not kill an innocent and virtuous person, because I shall not vindicate a wicked person. So who's the wicked?
Ah, there you go. That's an excellent question, because you can read it different ways. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
well,
Grace.
just like I said that tzaddik the Hebrew tzaddik can be understood as righteous or innocent. Rasha can be understood as evil or guilty.
Oh,
So the guilty is the person that's killing the innocent.
Well, the judge can be evil if if he or she has arranged for the capital punishment based on a corrupt role that he or she plays, then they're definitely evil
No.
and subject to eventual punishment from God.
right. Grace, you had your hand up.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I have a lot of distraction with two large dogs, but my point of thought was, who, so this is just maybe not of the time we're speaking in the Torah, and the courts, right? The courts decided who did wrong, who's the evildoer, this punishment for that behavior. And who wants that job? I certainly don't. And, Rabbi Norman and Mary have offered a great deal in distinguishing that. But I'm thinking that in today's time period, whereas, I couldn't imagine having that kind of rule. And that's why we have other links that support, like, for instance, the example that Michael gave, and that, the years of time that they wait because they don't execute immediately. Back in the time of the Torah, might have been a lot different, right, to the interpretation. And there's many, many interpretations of what this is being shared here. Oh my goodness, little girl. Can you hear the squeaky toy? Anyway, I was just thinking of the position of whom would be the ruler of the court deciding for the wrongdoer. And if the wrongdoer is found innocent, and then again, we've already discussed, what that would look like. And because we went backwards in Exodus. So we had this similar discussion already, if I recall. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that your sugar?
Correct.
Okay.
It's going back down. I had a rise and I was doing a correction, so I'll take care of it, but thank you.
Okay. Take care. Any other discussion? Yes, Rabbi.
Just to point out, it's not mentioned here, but I think we encountered it a week or two ago or whatever. The two primary considerations for a capital crime or capital punishment is that one, there has to be more than one objective witness, and two is that the judge or the judges must sleep on it. You can't have a guilty verdict the same day that the court opens. There has to be at least one night intervening.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's very important. Any other statements on there? Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Marty, I think, I'm not sure, today, and probably in the Torah time is also, if you don't know the rule or the law, that doesn't matter. You cannot say, oh, I didn't know. So those are rules not just for the judges, but people, if they want to know, if they break it and they don't know, tough luck.
Okay. Yeah, that is very true. They're supposed to know it.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
That's right. Any other comments? Well, what about the taking of bribes? Okay, verse 8.
It must have happened a lot in those days because it's mentioned several times in the
Yes,
Torah.
yes.
So it must have been rather prevalent.
Well, let's open up a little with time remaining on what is a bribe? You know, obviously here you can pay money to the judge, but are there other things that are bribed? Yes, Grace, you had your hand up.
I think a bribe is something in order to sway away from the truth. So if someone offers you, well, I'm going to give you this, so you will just look the other way and you will have not seen, observed, or be the witness there to support this case. That's how I see a bribe.
Okay. Several people, I know Amy had her hand up earlier, so I'm going to call on her. Michael had his hand up and Don has had his hand up. So I'll try to do it in that order. Go ahead, Amy.
We see bribes in many different areas of our lives. One that comes to mind is that the lobbyists in Congress. And I've never understood why that's permitted.
It's a good point. It's a good point. That's one way. Michael, you had your hand up too. It's a good one.
I'll say this about bribes. If you get away with it, it will very, very possibly lead to other bribes.
Mhm.
And it's not a way that God would want you to live your life with bribes. So you must not take the first one. That's what I would say about bribes. And I think most of us understand to a point what a bribe is. But what it leads to, I think, is the more important issue.
Okay. Yes, Don.
Yeah, I think bribery is the most common kind of corruption around the world because it bypasses any democratic process. And, you know, the briber gets what they want by, using the bribe. And as for lobbyists, I'm not sure lobbying is always bribery. I mean, there seems to be a legitimate form of lobbying that does persuade elected representatives to vote in a particular way. But I'm not going to dwell on that. But I did want to point out that bribery is rampant in Russia right after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it's what led to the creation of oligarchs who basically bought all the assets of the Soviet Union through bribery, and now own it. You know, the oligarchs are, by definition, they're all billionaires in the Soviet Union, and it's unfortunate that of the half a dozen major oligarchs, billionaire oligarchs in the Soviet Union, 3 of them are Israeli citizens, or dual Israeli citizens, Russian and Israeli. And it breaks my heart when I see that, but it's true. And it just points out that none of us are immune from corruption. There's no matter how much we can wave the Torah in front of our eyes, it's so powerful. But, you know, corruption and bribery is all around us. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Yes, Amy, and then back to Michael.
I just wanted to say that bribery subverts justice, and that is what is basically so wrong with it.
Yes, well, that is
It's
why it's here. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, Michael.
Someone mentioned our government, and that's very true. A lot of that has to do with term limits. When people in government are they're career criminal, I mean politicians, one would question, why do they want to do, what is the real reason, the underlying reason for them to be in politics all their lives? They get their name out there, and it induces other people, big corporations and such, that they could pay off somebody who has a name that everybody knows because they've been in politics for such a long time, and that could lead to bribery. It could. I'm not saying it would, but there's a very strong possibility it would. Term limits, I certainly agree with term limits personally.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that to the
Okay. Somehow there was a lot of feedback all of a sudden. I don't know what that was. So just if people have something else around them that may have been ringing, or a speaker, an extra speaker, please tone it down a little bit. Yes, Gail.
I was just going to say, question for Michael, well, for all of us. So how do you feel about the Supreme Court, where there is no term limit? That's for life. Do you think that can lead to corruption because you can't be removed? You're there until you die or resign.
Well,
or do we?
I appreciate your question. The way I would feel about the Supreme Court, if there's what I have an issue with, an unbalance. I think there should be an even amount of parties, political parties there. There's an even amount. If there's not going to be term limits.
Okay. I think Gail's question is it can open the door to make them more susceptible to bribery.
Any federal judge, not the Supreme Court.
They're not supposed to be political.
I know. That's why I'm trying to steer away from that and keep it in as a general discussion.
Right.
But I think that in general, let me toss out some observations. What about how do you feel when somebody out of the blue bakes a bread and says, "Here, I want to share it with you," and then all of a sudden you find that they come back and they ask a question for you to do something for them? Another example, you want somebody who makes the law to go your way, so you try to give the biggest donation that will sway their decision making. What about some benefit that the government gives people, okay, and it seems to be extremely extravagant? What about you want your kid to finish the meal, and in doing so, you're going to you finish the meal and you'll have some ice cream for dessert? What about excessive praise? These are just some examples of different forms of bribery.
Yep.
So what about this whole concept? Well, this is legally we understand this, but this is for everyone. It's not just the judges, as some people have interpreted. Others say it's just for the judges. But why would the book have that written in this way for all the people as opposed to just giving the judges what they wanted? Okay, I'm going to recall on people who haven't had much to say first. And I'm going to ask Marcia, and then I'll get to other people. Go ahead, Marcia.
The word that you're talking about is equality, equal to all. And that's a problem because the scale is never even. It's always moving. So it's what you as a person bring to these words that are bribery. I
Okay.
don't have an answer or a thought. It just seems to me that this is an area of great pain as well as joy.
Okay. All right. Good observation. David, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Michael, you're on. I didn't see any other hands so far.
See, what you were describing, Marty, I believe, is different levels of possible bribery. And when you're talking about a child finishing her food, it could actually be in a form of teaching. And so it would be hard. I understand that the underlining concept is bribery there. However, in certain instances, I don't think you could take it to that extent. It's a little, well, it can be complicated, but usually you associate the word bribery with something that's unlawful. See? And so I understand that. If I could just quickly answer Gail, that if she was agreeing to this, I just want to say I do agree with term limits for the Supreme Court. That would be my bottom line answer to that. So I'll let that go, but that's what I would say.
Amy, I think you had your hand up for a while. Oh, you didn't. Then it's Mary's turn. Suzanne. Let me let Suzanne go first and then Rabbi Mary.
I think in terms of a child, I think that's more incentivizing a child to eat their meal. There's no direct benefit to the parent. Whereas when I think of a bribe, I think of it as a transaction that benefits both parties, but the party that offers the bribe benefits the most. So I think there's a difference between bribing someone and incentivize. Well, you know what
advertising. You got it. You got the
and then yeah, and with Gail, I also think that the Supreme Court needs term limits. I mean, that's my own opinion.
Mary, okay. Did you have something else that you wanted to add, Suzanne?
Yeah, this goes way back when, and I don't want to get into the discussion, but when Michael asked about anti-Semitism, I mean, to me, it's explained very easily in 2 words: spiritual warfare, and maybe we can discuss that at another time.
Okay, thank you,
Rabbi Mary.
Yes.
Excuse me, everybody. I'm going to have to leave. So I wish you Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Happy New Year. Martov. Hope to see you on Sukkot. And we'll talk to you again soon.
To you too, and best to Lynn.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. Shalom Shabbat.
Thank you. Rabbi Mary.
Suzanne said exactly what I had in mind, and so does Michael. And Suzanne, I'll just repeat what you said so beautifully. Bribe is the both sides benefit. And in law, both of them are going to be punished. The briber and the receiving bribe. Thank you,
Mhm.
Susan.
Thank you. But now let's take it out of the courts. That's why I said, you know, okay. First, Grace.
Okay, I need some help with this. So I think a few of you know that I talk with my hands because I need to refamiliarize my ability to interpret with my hands in ASL and C sign. And recently I was visiting a friend and she insisted I did something which I was unintentionally looked like I did, right? There's a third entity involved with the situation, and her interpretation of what I had done was completely inaccurate. In order to calm the situation down, you know, I just told her wholeheartedly that it was, you know, not my intention, that I think she mistook the read on it. And still to this day, I don't know how to interpret, you know, what I am to do, how I am to feel about that. When someone that doesn't know sign language and they are deaf, hard of hearing, and I use the sign language, it doesn't, I don't know how to interpret it. I just don't know how to, you know, I know how I felt, you know, I felt horrible and, you know, I belittled myself. And so I just stuck my hands in my pocket and I didn't talk to her. I couldn't, you know, I just couldn't do it, you know, and I feel awful about it. And I don't know what I can do to right the wrong, I suppose, even though it was not an intentional wrongdoing. Am I making sense? So, you know, I'm not asking for a bribe. I'm not, you know, I'm not looking for, but I'm looking for a better way of communicating, perhaps.
Got it. So bribe, sometimes what you just said, a bribe can sometimes help us when we don't have the words to do it. Sometimes what we're considering a small bribe, you know, to get that kid to eat or something like that, or getting someone to understand that you're sorry. Maybe that's necessary. But what about swaying someone's decision making? Okay, we run into this every day of our own personal lives. We have to make decisions. But by the way, isn't advertising a form of bribery?
No.
Oh, we've got the best product for you and we can solve all your problems when you have such and such. Take this medicine.
They're lying.
Great for you.
If they're lying, are they lying?
But this is a form of bribery.
Is it? I don't think so. Because they're not giving me something.
Yeah. No,
They're assuming that you are a gullible person and you're going to listen to them because they're giving you truthful information.
But in bribe, let's see, A bribes B, just so I'll keep it clear. A gives something to B in order to sway B's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing tangible or it doesn't really
but there is. You gave them the money. They just put the idea in your head. You see, that it's reverse psychology. Mm-hmm. And it's the same. The outcome is the same. You have been defrauded.
Defraud is not bribe. Defraud,
I know.
as you
said, in a way, the two go hand in hand. One is to convince someone that you are correct, but it can also be used in other ways, and that's why I'm saying that these are very fine lines.
It could be what about looking at it like this, a soft bribe or a hard bribe?
Well, you know what, Michael? Michael, this is your topic always. Is if a person is in a concentration camp and he talks to an officer and he said, you know, I found this stone, or I will do this and this. Give me a piece of bread. Is that soft or it's hard?
Yeah, it's a matter of judgment in each circumstance. Giving the bribe, bribing the kid with ice cream, it fast forwarded into adult life, and that person still has to have something sweet at the end of each meal.
Yeah.
And he has finished it and then has a weight problem or a diabetic problem.
Well,
every action that we do there's a good side and a bad side.
Well,
yes, Amy. Yes, Amy.
I think sometimes we confuse the word bribe with the idea of manipulation. When you have a child at the dinner table and he wants dessert, but he doesn't want his vegetables and his meat, to me, to say, well, you can have ice cream if you eat your vegetables and your meat, that's a form of manipulation because you're not really receiving a lot of benefit from it, except for the satisfaction that your child has a balanced meal.
But you just defined the word bribe. It's a manipulation of someone.
Right, in part, but in the sense of a parent and other forms of...
There you go.
Marty, I think the problem is you made too big of an umbrella.
Well, this is the thing, because we do this all the time. What I wanted to point out, just like in giving, receiving is also at different levels. It was mentioned before. We have these cross very fine lines that separate each thing. And we all do these different things. But at what level do we say it's something that has to be dealt with legally? When we fawn over someone, aren't we in a way bribing that person to think of you in a good light? Okay, I'm provoking it intentionally. Okay, first I'm going to let Grace and then Dawn. Amy shook her head. She already disagrees. I know that, but that's good.
Sometimes I think it's just the power of persuasion. So I persuaded this person, this friend of mine for many years, to kind of relax, and I gave her a hug, and I told her, I'm sorry, it was a misinterpretation. Perhaps it is what you saw, but it wasn't intended. So I just gave her a hug and said, need to go about my day. And that was a way for me to resolve it, but I wasn't, necessarily bribing anyone. And I've used the word bribe with a parent. I'm teaching this, special needs child, and we're working together. She's in observation. The three of us are doing what I was doing. And I asked her, I said, am I allowed to use bribes with this child? And she said, oh yeah, we use bribes all the time. And she's the grandparent of this child. And right, the grandparent. And so I just offered a simple idea behind getting him to move through the water as in a safe way. How about providing him his favorite, coloring book or time in the park with a friend, anything like that. I just left it in her hands, but it's a good idea. And but I asked permission first, right? I asked permission first. And I think that borders on the idea that, we have to manipulate things together for the better good in the power of persuasion. I'm going to persuade you to listen to me by yelling. Well, that's not good. I don't want to yell at the dogs, the animals, the horses, any of those. But, you know, I can say, how about if you behave this way, we do this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially with special needs children, they learn that very quickly. And then they become ultimately very manipulative.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway,
Yes,
that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
thank you. Yes, Don, and then of
Yeah,
course,
if I-
Ricky.
I know we're short of time, but just to squeeze in the bribery is a form of negotiation. And the question is, in what legal framework is it in? And that, you know, we're in the Torah. The Torah is the legal framework. So without the legal framework, bribery is perfectly valid form of negotiation. You know, so that's what we're reading right now. This is the origins of the legalism for making those decisions. So I know we're out of time. So
Okay, well, let me let Ricky
You're
have her 2
fast.
cents.
The perfect bribe for children and dessert is they have to turn their plate over to get the dessert. You got it first, Marty. They have to eat everything on the one side of the plate before you can turn it over to get the dessert on the other side.
Okay.
It also saves dishwashing.
Okay. Any other comments? But yes, Michael, please.
Yeah, a policeman bribed me a couple of months ago, and was making a left turn. I went into the right lane from a left turn, so he stopped me, and he said, "You know why I'm stopping you?" I said, "I'm not sure. I think so, because I entered in the right lane." He says, "That's correct. Are you going to make it a habit of doing it again?" I said, "No." So this, okay. So saying that, I'm going to give you a warning, no ticket.
Okay. Okay. Any other observations? Well, all I'm trying to do is stimulate your ideas that there are different levels. We had a similar discussion about lying, and at what point does a white lie become an out and out lie? Can a white lie get you in trouble? And these are the gray areas, okay, that we have to consider whenever we are dealing with people. Not just legal ramifications of this, but it's everyday interactions with our friends, our neighbors, even our enemies. It all goes together. Okay. Foreign aid. Okay. It is another form of bribery. If you think about it, when you're doing it, depends on the motive behind everything. The motive of the recipient and the motive of the giver. The intention behind it was mentioned before. And that is a very important concept, especially in matters of life and death. Yes, Michael.
That's what the example I gave was what I was trying to convey when I said a soft bribe and a hard bribe. Something that is very, very minor. Very, very minor. That's what I was trying to convey.
Good point. Any other discussion, announcements?